everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark, and joining me this week, as always, my two regular co-hosts, John and Nessie. Say hello. Oh, wait a minute. No John, no Nessie at all this week?
Give me some orange juice.
So so I called in, the backups. Kelly, you've been on quite a few times. You have a lot to say about a lot of stuff. Always enjoy having you as a guest. I always like to call you noted nautical nerd, Jaded, Redhead. But appearing for the first time as as a regular guest. I think you've been on once before for Dragon Moot last year. No, never before.
This is absolutely my first time being on YouTube anywhere whatsoever.
Gotcha. I got you first.
All right, all the fandoms, listen up. Leaf Underhill.
Lady Leaf Underhill. Artsy fartsy nerd. Plays in my D&D game. We're actually playing tomorrow night.
Yeah, I should be preparing for that instead of coming on this stream that I didn't know I was coming on or D&D till this afternoon, and I'm completely unprepared in every way except for the ears.
Except for the ears.
Yeah, I wanted to dress up fully as my main D&D character when we did a stream like this, but last minute.
Well, I'm glad you made it anyway. And next time we'll make sure you have more, because you were just kind of like, I'll do it if you want me to. And I'm like, well, hell yeah. And you're like, okay, I need to start getting ready. And that was less than 2 hours ago.
I got home at I got home about an hour ago, and I just was just gross and sweaty, so had to change and get ready and slap some makeup on and just get into like a mental D&D.
Right on,
Thank
right
you.
On. Well, I will just say it is the 4th of July. I know a lot of people aren't here, like a lot of our regulars aren't here to watch, and that's great. I hope everyone is having a fantastic time today, whether you're here with us or you're out celebrating with friends and family. Have a good time. Don't blow your fingers off. I saw the funniest meme today. It said, remember this before you go lighting fireworks. Everybody who's working the ER is the people that just graduated from med school.
2 months ago, yeah.
2 months ago. So, right. Yeah.
So your fingers might get sewn back on in a weird way.
Right.
Just be ready for that.
They are the least experienced doctors you can have, so just bear that in mind.
Just carry them in a pouch around your neck. It'll bring you good luck.
It'll bring you good luck. Okay, so ostensibly, this is a world building and campaign design for tabletop role-playing games discussion, something neither one of you have ever done.
So I would like to for this particular discussion, Stephen, as a dungeon master, you have on one side, let's say at 0, you've got things happening in your story, in your campaign, and you know every beat. You're in control of everything. And then over here at 100, you're bumbling along like all the adventurers, the party members. Where are you?
Where am
as a DM? Yeah.
75 most of the time.
All right. Yeah, I actually have some prepared questions I want to ask, but again, going off of that, let's get into it.
Yeah. So, well, one of the things I wanted to touch on is that world building and campaign design are related ideas, but they are really not the same thing. You can design a campaign when somebody else has done all the world building for you. And honestly, if you're trying to homebrew as a dungeon master for the first time, that is often the easier way to do it, is to go, this is Forgotten Realms, this is Westeros, this is Tamriel. You choose the world where somebody else has done all the world building for you, and then you build your story within that world. But world building itself, this process right here, is something that I deeply love, because you're having to come up with everything from the ground up. The land masses, the political identities of various groups, and all of that stuff. World building is an exercise for me. It's just a whole lot of fun to do.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know.
I'm guessing a lot of people who DM do it because they like the world building. Like Emma, who's in the chat, who's only recently started playing, but she's started making this whole world.
Yeah.
She should be on here instead of me.
She really should. Emma, do you want to come on? I'll send you the link. You totally could. I mean, I know it's like absolutely last second, but if you want the link, I will totally send it to you. You just need to let me know.
Later than last second.
She said, "Yup, let's go." All right. Let me just send this link real quick, and we'll get her in here.
Awesome.
Emma, I'm going to send it to you through our Slack group. Okay, give you 10 minutes. All right, I'm going to give you 10 minutes, and then I will, I'll send it now. You'll be able to find it.
So,
all right,
Steven,
I sent it to you through Slack.
When you build your world, is there, when it comes to some of the smaller details, do you tend to kind of hyper focus on some of those, or do you have a good idea of what you want your story to be?
There's layers, and honestly, it depends on where you're starting from. Some people like to world build for the sake of having an interesting world in which stories take place. Okay. Sometimes that world building happens because you have a story in mind that you want to tell, and you literally will world build around that idea. You will world build and campaign design at the same time, because you will be designing the world to fit the needs of the game or the story you're telling, the game you're playing. A fantastic example for those of you who have seen it is Fantasy High on Dimension 20. It is a great little, it's short, it's only like 17 episodes, so you can watch it. But the guy wanted to tell a John Hughes Dungeons and Dragons story. So he built his game world to exactly suit what he needed. But he had to do a lot of world building. There's maps and place names and, characters that inhabit it and all that stuff. But it was really in service of his campaign idea. But the game world that I play in, that my games are set in, Leaf, you play in that game world. I have another, Leaf is part of Emerald team. I also have a Ruby team, and Ruby team also plays in that game world. They're not in the same timeline per se, like the actions of one party are not going to affect the actions of another. But I built that world so that I would have an interesting place to tell stories from. I did not start off with, I have a campaign idea and I need a place to put it. Okay. I started off with, I have a place to put campaigns.
Okay. And is that how you is that how you usually roll? Like, as far as like because DMs are all different.
Normally, it's the story first for me, actually. Okay. Because like I've got a sci-fi adventure Dungeons and Dragons story I've kind of wanted to develop. I've got a Wild West Dungeons and Dragons story I've been wanting to develop. Yes. I've got a Victorian England one I've been wanting to work out. But like
he's got a trick-or-treating one he wants to do.
That one's actually happening live here in Texas at HereBeCon. We are doing a one-shot trick-or-treating D&D game. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I will do my world building for those games to suit the story. But obviously, if you're playing something like Forgotten Realms, like the primary Dungeons and Dragons setting, that was not developed for the purpose of a single story. You know what I'm saying? It was developed as a place where lots of different stories can happen.
They can be as small and as big as you're willing to take on, I guess.
Right.
As far as
So like it's hard to have absolute answers about you should do this, then this, then this, because it's an art form, and like many art forms, there is no right way to do it.
Mhm.
But I will say, as far as, because your original question was about the details, how detailed do I get? I get exactly as detailed as I need to be in my like preamble.
Okay.
I don't need to know exactly what's carved into the wooden box. Even if it's an important wooden box, I can describe it as a carved wooden box. If I need to be more specific for story purposes because it controls animals or whatever, there's animal carvings in the wooden box. So I do not get hung up on details when I'm world building, because the world is big. For campaign design, like that's different.
Do you have any brilliant anecdotes of like improvised moments where you had to think of something? Do you have any stories about like when you might have been, as a DM, put on the spot and you just kind of like pulled something out of your butt?
Duh. I mean, yes, but from a world building perspective, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I really feel like world building is something that happens by yourself most of the time,
And for you, does it just happen kind of organically, or do you have to like sit down and work at it? Like, does it just kind of like formulates in your head? You have everything kind of there.
Right. So it's a thing that happens over time. And I guess that's like where I always start with the biggest I can. What does the world look like? If I was in space and looked down, what would I see? And maybe that's just the way that my head works, but I am always like wanting to start with geography. Your cool stories need a place to happen.
In your line of work, that's completely understandable.
Right. I am a land surveyor, so like it does make some sense. But even when you're like making a map, the map exists as part of the story. Like you can look at Earth and you can recreate an Earth-like map for your fantasy world where it is, those land masses have the geological features they do because it's driven by plate tectonics and things like that. My game world is hold on, this is just too funny to pass up. Thank you, Yogi. That was hilarious.
Thank you, Yogi. Yes.
Too funny to
Yeah, I was in such a hurry. I couldn't like fix them to look human.
Right.
Before she knew it, yeah, she was on camera and forgot, and she was like, "Oh well, secret's out."
I did get my cute baby Drogon Sanrixian shirt on.
We're always happy to shill some Sanri merch here.
Of course.
Many of the other bots put the link to her threadless shop in the chat. I'm not set up to do it like usual.
Kenny Cross says started building their D&D world back in the 80s with first edition when they published a book called Deities and Demigods. I had that book. I remember it well. And quickly became frustrated when there were no campaign worlds where you could put Thor, Bast, or No-Cha worshippers in, which is why you world build your own, But regarding like the map construction, the map in my game world, Leaf can tell you because she was freaked out by this. The entire world is the corpses of ancient gods. So it's not driven by plate tectonics. Seas do not exist because of, the spreading of the crust and all that. No, they exist because corpses piled up over there and not over there. And because like there's a place called Morning Bay on the map. Morning spelled
like morning. Okay. All right. Yes. Yep. I will, tell the audience I have played briefly in Steven's game just as like a replacement, really quick for, when people can't make it, I'll jump in. I mean, I've got dice. I'll roll for this person.
Right. We haven't played together much, Kelly, you and I, but we're friends in other ways, and I'm sure we'll get some good gaming eventually.
Yeah.
I foresee it.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you had to, I completely understand, job obligations, but yeah, Steven had to. We started a campaign together,
and then I got a new job.
And then Steven got a new job, and he played like session 1, and that was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, it'll happen in the future, I'm sure. But work is work is work. Yeah. Oh, Morning Bay. Morning Bay exists because the land was rent asunder in a huge conflict between eldritch beings. That's why it's Morning with a U. A lot of people died there. There is no place on Earth that is an analog for that. You know what I mean? I saw one guy make a fantasy map where all of the land masses looked like they were swirling, and it was literally like the gods stirred the world into existence. I mean, that's brilliant. I love it. But that is a consideration for your world building. High fantasy, low fantasy, no fantasy. Like Westeros. How is Westeros put together? Oh, hold on. Here she is.
Uh-oh.
The moment you've been waiting for.
Hey.
Hello, Emma.
Thanks for joining us.
Can we hear you?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear her.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, you're very quiet.
Hello?
Hello.
Ooh.
Is that better?
Ooh, I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in a new room that may or may not be more echoey, so I just want to check sound-wise.
Okay.
Hello, Emma.
Hey. How are you doing, Stephen? Sorry, that got really weird.
Okay,
Hi everyone.
Moving in a completely different direction. Emma, you're world building your first world right now, aren't you?
Well, I've sort of started creating it to be able to make a campaign, and I have the big bad, the initial encounter, and several different plot hooks along the way, along with like a world that I'm quite excited by, and that should, fingers crossed, offer lots of potential for combat and political, but also like the exploration side of things that like doesn't sometimes can sort of fall by the wayside in certain things. Like everyone knows the place.
You've hit upon something very central to the world building and campaign design aspects of this, both sides of this, is that you need a world where you're not just fighting things, or you're not just climbing mountains, or you're not just talking to people all the time. Most players want some mix of all of that, overcoming the natural obstacles of the world, using violence to solve their problems sometimes, and words to solve them at other times. That's what the game is. So yeah, but does that mean then that you started with the story and your world building to fit your story?
Yeah, well, basically I started with a premise for a world of like what would happen if the material plane had regular incursions from other planes, like there were constant breaches with other planes, and like how would that affect the world, what would happen, and then how would you fix that? And that is the history of the world, is like this mental campaign I've got of like what are effectively this region's like OG level 20 heroes, like stabilizing a portion of the material plane to stop these incursions. But that does mean that the outside of this small portion of the plane, it constantly fluctuates. So like maps don't work because all of a sudden I'll just be like, oh my god, it's just random volcanoes. Because we've got like the fire plane just turned up, and so yeah, like I find the ability to have that fluctuation like quite kind of interesting. And it also like inbuilds a premise of like, well, could the stability stop being stable?
Right.
And if so, like, how would you fix it? How would you want it to stay stable? As well as like introducing like sort of elements of political shenanigans, like, okay, now that we've got this magical control of a particular region, who controls the magical control? Well, obviously they have huge amounts of power in this region. And like, how does that power affect the internal political stability of this region and things like that? So yeah, that's where my brain went. I spent a solid like 2 weeks just like thinking of these concepts.
But like, this is how it works. Like, you get that spark of an idea, and for you it was, what if planar shenanigans?
Mm-hmm.
And everything campaign and world building wise has flowed from that one idea. And I usually find that that's more a thing that happens when I'm doing a campaign, when I'm starting with the story. You know, you have this idea and you're just like, ooh, that's a neat idea. For the one that Ruby team plays in, I won't say too much because some of them are in the chat and I don't want to give anything away. But for that one, the inspiration literally came from the lyrics of a heavy metal song and then a collaboration video that Joe Magician and Shakespeare of Thrones did. And I took those two elements and I just went, okay, I'm going to start pulling these threads and see where it takes me. And it turned into a whole campaign.
That's super cool.
Nice. So, like, Emma, I don't want, you know, if you don't want to like give anything away about your campaign, but yeah, like how deep into the weeds are you? Like, how, you know, where are you in this process? If you don't know where you are, that's perfectly understandable.
Where am I in the process of building this campaign?
Yeah, Emma, for Emma.
Oh, Emma, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I thought you were asking me.
No.
Oh, did you not send Kelly the link? Or...
I've got a Google Doc of basically like a player's intro pack. Like, here is the background to the world, that as in like
Yeah, not giving anything away. No spoilers.
So I've got like here's like a little pack so that people can sort of choose their class, and like, here's a background for how your character might have got into the class. Like, this is Naomi's guild. This is where like every arcane practitioner, most notably like wizards and artificers primarily, go. Sorcerers and bards, you know, less inclined to join the guild and then end up just like going off and doing their own thing. But also like, because this region has like very specific, like it blocks out all sort of extra planar entities, which means that if you are someone that needs an extra planar entity to give you your power, like clerics or warlocks, then you have to go on a pilgrimage outside of the stability in order to be able for that god or being or fiend or whoever it is to be able to give you that power. So like, it becoming like a cleric or a warlock or a paladin is way more dangerous than it is for anything else. But then also, because you've got like this extra like outer border region, then a lot of military and a lot of like rangers, barbarians and fighters will be posted to those sort of military outposts as a sort of defensive force in case there is like a planar tear nearby that produces beings that want to attack. So yeah, that's sort of where I am in terms of the...
So there was this game made by Palladium Games back in the 90s, and it was called Rifts, Rifts. And it was sort of like a 2012 Psychic Awakening, planar portals open up in the world we live in 2012. And it sounds like yours is worse, actually, maybe. But the thing is, Palladium Games made a bunch of different games. They made science fiction, fantasy, spy, novel, military type things. They also made a lot of licensed role-playing games. Like they had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing game was made by Palladium, and it was an excuse for them to say you can play whatever you want because it just came through a dimensional portal, you know.
Yeah.
And then they made up a bunch of world-building stuff for their own game, but that's what it made me think of. But theirs are like, there's big ones here, big one there, big one there, big one there. Don't go where the portals are. Yours is like, don't leave where the portals aren't.
Yeah.
Stay here.
So that's sort of primarily what the world is. But I've also like based it like so far. I'm only really thinking through like this particular region. I'm not really thinking through like what exactly is happening outside the borders of the stability, because I know that the first arc relates to just a border outpost, but is primarily about people inside the stability. So there's not really much point yet of thinking about like, well, what happens if when they're like the players who are of indeterminate like skill, indeterminate class, indeterminate race, indeterminate level, like what happens if they decide to go outside of the stability?
But like that's a whole different question.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and it's one that needs answering, you know, but it might not need answering in the world building phase necessarily. It might not even need answering in the campaign design phase. It might just need answering in the moment. You know, as Dungeon Master, you're like, oh, so you go into the red mist. Okay, well, too bad for you. I'm in a bad mood today. You know, and roll a d20 to see how many years of your life gets sucked away.
Yeah, you went shopping too long. Here's a green dragon.
Don't be reminding
whatever are you talking about?
Future players, you know, if you're in Steven's campaign, like don't spend excessive amounts of time shopping, or making like special orders. None of that nonsense.
I mean, shopping is fine, but too much is too much, and sometimes I'm just like, I'm bored. I'm going to try to kill you now.
So I have oh, sorry, go ahead. I interrupted.
Oh, sorry. Just before it got too far away in the chat earlier, Kenny had an interesting comment.
I'm going to scroll up and see if I can
about wanting to put in worshippers of Thor, etc.
Oh yeah, this one right here, right?
Yeah, that one. And I mean, I would have thought it wouldn't be that hard to just adjust it to put them in.
Stephen, in what way was that first edition so restrictive where that you can't do that?
Well, it's more about the world. It's not about the rules. It's about the world building.
So was it just the politics
like,
of that?
When they make a D&D product, they are making it with Forgotten Realms in mind. Thor does not exist there. So that's what I think he's talking about, why he built his own world, so he could have that as part of the fabric of the world from the get-go, rather than having to just be like, oh, there's a Thor cult here now.
Okay.
Because the Forgotten Realms doesn't have that.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, I started my world building for my game world because I wanted to work on a religion. I had a really interesting religion.
Are we starting one?
What?
Are we starting one? Let's go.
Yeah. Like
the gods permit us.
Yes.
Some of you know the names of the main gods, at least some of them. Senephra should sound familiar to everybody who plays on Emerald Team. Senephra is one of the big four gods in that religion. There's also a Garvis, Galorian, and the guy who's he's the least interesting one. Why do I always blank on his
I
name?
will be, just so you guys know, I will be eavesdropping in tomorrow's game, by the way.
Okay. But yeah, I wanted to make a monotheistic, polytheistic religion.
Okay.
Marthin, that's his name, Marthin. Like I say, he's the least interesting.
He's and most forgetful of it. Or, yeah, apparently.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
he's a god of agriculture.
Oh, come on.
You
Every
know,
pantheon
like,
needs a boring one.
I mean, it's important,
Mhm.
but like he's not the cool one.
So, as far as world building, something you look forward to is building the religion.
Yeah, at least that's how the world that I play in now started.
Okay.
Because I had this idea about 4 gods who are actually one god, but there's actually a 5th god who is actually a manifest, who is actually the form that all the 4 take when they're acting as one. It's
like a
it's
Megazord.
weird, oh man! So it's like, think about the way that Christians sometimes will wrestle with defining the Trinity.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that struck me.
yeah. And I also thought it was interesting for them to be basically like to have some that would appear to be almost polar opposite, but yet would still, according to their holy text, always agree on what the right course of action was.
Okay.
You know, it was an idealized. It's a very idealized religion. Doesn't know, you know, the people that follow it are flawed, but the gods, perfect. Down to the fact that they always agree on everything, even the goddess of mercy and the goddess of war.
Okay, so when it comes to, let's say, with world building,
Mm-hmm.
and you have kind of a good idea of events that are going to be happening as the story progresses.
Yes.
How involved, like, do you try to have your players heavily involved in that, or is this just like this is going to happen whether they're taking part or not?
I mean, it's a little column A, a little column B, I think.
Okay.
I think my big bad evil guy is doing their thing no matter what.
Okay.
Other times, stuff can move around to accommodate the wishes of the players or the direction that they've chosen to go. It's not like it's December 17th, therefore the lieutenant's girlfriend is going grocery shopping, whether the players need that to happen or not. And obviously that's a ridiculous extreme type example, but I think my big bad evil guy is always on their plan. But that plan can change based on what the characters are doing. What in Ruby Team, the players are working for the big bad evil guy.
I knew it. Okay.
Yeah. But like that's their choice. They're playing not good characters.
All right.
Yeah.
I think Laura corrupted all of them. Please tell me that happened.
Probably.
Okay.
Man, you missed it today. Leaf, you were in there listening in when we were playing.
I'm sorry. I had to work.
Work is what it is. Like that's why
Yeah.
I missed our game. Like it is what it is. Nobody's blaming you or anything. But
Okay. So, all right. Do you want to? Are you going to tell me what happened, or like, is it a secret?
I mean, basically, last adventure they found something out. One character wanted to inform their higher ups about the information. Another character didn't, and like they were like the players were yelling at each other. But let me put it to you like this: the characters were yelling at each other. The players were having a blast. The players were having a blast.
So
Go ahead, Leaf.
Between you giving one particularly great magic item, which everyone would really want.
Everybody wanted it.
And shortly after that, saying to one character, player, sorry, I don't know, are you going to let that other player talk to you that way? I was wondering, were you trying to get them to fight each other?
Look, they were in the presence of an NPC who was related to somebody who was getting talked down to, and she's like, "You're gonna let her talk to you like that?"
I know, it's just between those two things. It made me wonder whether you were wanting to get them to.
No, the NPC is called Darsala, and she just said what Darsala would say in that moment. It's not. I am an impartial and uncaring god. I do want to take up Joe's question here, though. Do I make an effort to set up a sandbox for the player, or is it more like a railroad? So I tend to err on the side of railroad, but like nobody is forced to follow the tracks. You can go wherever you want. There is enough sandbox that you can, if you want to jump on a horse and strike out into the wilderness, that's great. Do that. If that's what the party wants to do, that's what you should do. But if you take the train ride, that's got the scenic route already mapped out. And you can, take over the train, rob the train. I don't care. But I do try to have where I think the story would go, what I think is a fun direction to take it. And hopefully the players will be enticed to follow that, but they're not forced to. So, Kelly, you asked me earlier, if 0 is no control and 100 is absolute control, where am I? And I told you I'm like a 75.
Okay.
I'm not I try to strike the perfect balance. Well, I mean, I do, but to me, the perfect balance is me knowing what the story is and where I want it to go, because that's where I've put my creative effort into making that interesting. But if you want to just go see where this random left turn in the road takes you, that's fine, but it's only going to take you as far as my creativity in that moment.
I was going to ask you, have you ever had like a party just kind of get so off track, or like they're like just refusing to progress, the story? Have you ever had to like really kind of take the reins as a DM? And, is there a subtle trick to that?
Honestly, I don't think so. But I don't think I've had that problem because I try to figure out what the players want ahead of time and be prepared to give them as much of that as makes sense.
So there's like a subtle guidance to being a DM. Like you're just kind
of is.
Yeah.
Like Dungeon Mastery is not an easy thing to do. It's incredibly rewarding when you get it right. When you have that moment where the players go, "Oh my God," because the villain twist, or where everybody's waiting to hear, does it hit that 20? Because we got to hit that 20 because that's tough and like it's really forced them to think outside the box. Like that's the good stuff for a dungeon master, is watching everybody else have a good time in the world that you created. But world building plays into that because that's the canvas that everybody's painting on,
Okay.
Yeah. So, questions, comments? People in the chat are having some really good conversation about this. I will say also, as I developed my game world, like it went in stages. I started with the religion, and I really sort of like hashed out the religion. Then I made a map, and that map has been redrawn and had changes applied to it. Stuff has moved, and stuff has been added, and stuff has been taken away, because I will like make minor adjustments to what I know to suit the current campaign, But for the most part, the political entities haven't changed, and that was the thing too. Like I didn't want kingdoms and knights. That's not. I did not want a dish. It's a quasi-European flavor, of course, because that's just Dungeons and Dragons based on the way the weapons and armor. But politically, it is not really like European kingdoms. It's city-states, but they all have a common religious cultural tie.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of like My Little World has been inspired by the sort of city-state idea, because I found that really cool. So now I also have city-states in My Little World, along with the very different flavour of, oh my god, everything is terrible, let's protect this small pocket.
Right. See, I actually love this idea, Emma. I think it's fantastic. It sounds like it would be a fun place to play, dangerous place to play. And a place and it sounds like a dungeon master's world too, because you can be like, dude, it's planar chaos. A wizard did it, I saw a guy wearing a T-shirt the other said, "I don't need a reason. I'm the dungeon master," and that applies so well especially when you're like literally bending reality at the edge of the map.
Yeah. So I think I'm super excited to like play in it, because I think it has a lot. I hope it has a lot that I'd be able to play with. I just need to work out what's actually happening in the cities, and like I know who I want the big bad to be. I just need to know like what their actual plan is for the players to be able to affect. Just minor hiccup. But yeah.
Yeah.
Jolie, who's been playing with some of us and has now just started DMing for some of us, including that game that Stephen sadly had to drop out of. She said that part of her reason for DMing is wanting to test out the fantasy world that she and her sister had been building for a story. But she's not got people playing in it yet. She started with running a module to get the DMing experience beforehand. Emma, I'm guessing you're not going to do that you're going to just jump into your world. I'm just getting that impression.
So I want to be able to jump in, because like I really struggle with the preset worlds, because like I don't know, they just like don't vibe with me quite. Like I just don't. Like I've now got quite a few of the module books. I worked out that I have spent far too much money recently.
Those books are expensive.
Oh yeah. It was not healthy bank balance time. And then so I want to get a bit of practice DMing before going into this world. I don't know whether that means taking a group of people and like play testing something in the world, like a one shot or something, to make sure that something makes sense, or if it would be better to one shot something in the pre-existing materials, or do both before like launching into the campaign proper. But and I like spells are beyond me, which are kind of important for a DM.
Yeah, you gotta understand
like spell casting classes. I don't know, not played one.
Right, you are brand new to the game, as in
utterly brand new. Yeah,
as in you play with Emerald Team,
and
that is the only only D&D you've ever played.
Yep.
So you've literally only played your barbarian in the game you play with me.
Yep.
And your world building to be a dungeon master. I am. Yep. My heart is soaring right now. I am so happy. Like when I started playing D&D again, I didn't want a dungeon master, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it because eventually one of you guys is going to feel guilty, and you're going to do it, and I'm going to get to play. And it worked.
Oh, is that okay? All right.
And then I started what is now called Red Team or Ruby Team, and then I started what is now called Emerald Team. It was called Green Team originally, and that's producing its own dungeon masters in the form of the aforementioned Jolie and of course Emma. So yeah, totally worth it. But I feel like most worlds, when they get built, do come from that sort of like that singular thing where you're like, I want to do something that's different. This is the idea that sets this apart from all the other stuff, and then I'm going to start placing the bricks to be, laying the foundation there and building that whole house up from that point.
I mean, the world building is the part of DMing that sounds fun to me, which is a part you totally don't need to do. But the thing with, I assume the pre-made modules, they come with, have like this many players of this level, and then the things you're fighting, it's like already balanced for you, instead of when trying to make that all up on your own and work out numbers. Sounds really
the thing is, there are helpful ways to look at it. Like there's the challenge rating system, which when you learn how to interpret something's challenge rating and how to determine what challenge rating is appropriate for your players, it actually works pretty well.
Does the Dungeon Master's Guide just have like a formula for that?
Well, it's a very straightforward formula, but yes, it does.
I've never cracked open a DM book, so this is all new. This is all foreign territory to me.
1 second.
You don't have to go get one.
To do that. Yeah, it does have a formula, because like that's one of the things that I'm most worried about going into DMing, is that I will immediately TPK the party.
So, here's a Dungeon Master's Guide.
Okay.
This is what the inside of it looks like. Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. The secret's out.
From that, I can't really tell the difference between that and the player's handbook or any of the other books.
I'll rewind. I'll go back and rewind this and screenshot that, I guess. Yeah.
Enhance.
Yeah. So, have you as a DM, let's say, like with TPK or something, like have you experienced that, Stephen, either as a player or a DM?
Only as a player. I have never killed an entire party. Okay. Air quotes. I have never killed an entire party without it being sort of integral to. I did kill an entire party once, and so they could fight their way out of hell.
Oh, okay. All right. That's all right.
So it was part of the story, But no, I've never accidentally killed a whole party. I have killed players.
You killed brother recently.
No.
Yeah,
I have killed player characters. I have not killed players.
You've rolled too many nat 20s.
So, Stephen, as a DM, have you killed a player and regretted it?
No.
All right.
No. That is part of the game.
Okay.
Character death is part of it. Everybody lives, everybody dies. That's true for all of us. It's true for all of the characters. Yeah, a little bit of Freudian slip for sure, killing players. I will say though, I have felt sad about it, but I haven't felt like it was a mistake.
Okay, that's what I meant. Now, as far on that level or on that note of sadness, has anyone here, Stephen, as a player or a DM, become a little bit over attached to any NPCs?
Oh yes. All
right. I want to hear these stories.
Not anybody here, but dear God, have I had people get overly attached to NPCs. Like, I had a girlfriend that I was almost like, it almost felt like she was cheating on me with this NPC.
Oh, no. All right. Now it's getting weird. All right. I like this.
No further details, Role playing has more than one definition. If you look it up, not my shiniest moment as a dungeon master either. But yeah, there are people who. Okay, this is not a world building or campaign design question, but people often will play D&D thinking it's one thing when it's really not. Okay. I've heard it described a lot of really great ways, but sometimes it's easier to tell people what it isn't. And what it isn't is wish fulfillment for you just because you want it to, things don't happen just because you want them to. It's meant to be cooperative, epic storytelling where there's danger and stakes. But I played with people who wanted everything to be easy, wanted to come out on top of everything, wanted everybody in the world to think they were the prettiest or the smartest or the strongest or the fastest. And I'm just like, this not interesting. That's not interesting. Again, that's not really part of this discussion but what the game is about telling adventure stories. Leaf, I struggle with you sometimes because you're so nice. Your character is so nice that I'm just like, you're supposed to like hit things over the head sometimes, and you do, to be fair. But your character is super nice.
I feel like for a half-orc barbarian, Goth is also very polite.
Very polite.
Yeah.
You're like Hulk after he got like Professor Hulk.
Yes.
Your rage is
yeah. All right, fine. I guess I'll go smash stuff.
Right. Seems gratuitous to me.
I mean, my character does attack, and Potter for a while kept teasing me that I was setting everything on fire.
This is the real thing that happened in our game. This is a real thing that happened in our game. And you know what? That's okay. Because but like you were still faced with you were faced with a problem and you found a way to overcome it. But sometimes I'm just like, dang, I wanted to attack you with these rats.
What's the point of being mean to some poor starving rats stuck in a pit?
Yeah.
So, as the DM, like kind of going back a little bit, you are the leader of the group therapy.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're the you're the psychologist that didn't sign up for this.
No,
now everyone's working through their problems.
Look, often the DM is the one that needs the most help in the group,
Feeling called out, but okay.
But I will say one of the really rewarding things about this, once you do your world building, once you do your campaign design and you get around the table with your friends, is watching them have that moment or the idea that you are really stepping into something new, something you created, and inhabiting and walking a mile in somebody else's shoes 15 seconds at a time sometimes. Mm-hmm. So, but the thing is, you get to place everybody there. You get to decide who's the good guys and who's the bad guys, and who's a good guy but kind of an asshole, and who's super nice but will totally stab you in the back when you're not looking. And you get to play all of that, and you get to decide where they inhabit the world and how they're going to drive that story. And that's a lot of fun, man. Like it's fun to be a player and to really hone in on that one character, that one personality. But it's also really fun to just be like, you get to be the asshole, and and you get to be the biggest asshole. And everybody around the table doesn't blame you. They blame the person you're pretending to be.
Mm-hmm. At least that's how you hope it goes.
Well,
I've gotten some text, the next morning after, because I play, I play a real SOB in one of my games.
What's up, Patrick? This is Patrick from Gold Team.
Oh.
Hello.
Plays in one of my other D&D games. Good guy. He was on the last D&D stream I did just a few weeks ago.
Ah, that's right. Okay.
And Enemy
Yep.
Spy.
Yeah.
The game I don't get to spy on.
Yeah.
So,
By the way, Stephen, after you got off Zoom today, one of the two players who was in that conflict was like just making sure that the other player understood it was completely just your character, and
Right. Well, and there's no harm in having that said, but like I thought it was great because the thing is they were really inhabiting the character in the moment. They were really doing that sort of like improv sketch type thing in the moment. They were really inhabiting it.
I get the feeling you were really enjoying it that one time when NPC and my character were kind of arguing, trying to negotiate.
Yeah, it's fun. And it's fun because you get to, like, because it's not the real world, you know. Like I'm just, you guys all know me. I try to be very kind-hearted, gentle soul type of person, but like everybody's got that edge somewhere, you know. Inside every man there is a beast. Blah blah blah. Mine comes out when I play games. I play to win. Now I don't have to win. Like win or lose at the end, like of course you want to win, but like that's not the thing. Trying to win, that's where I have fun. In the process, you know, in the process of talking crap or trying to haggle or rolling the dice to try to hit the characters or hit the monster if I'm a player. Like that's where the fun lies for me. Not in the result, but in the effort to get the result.
So I think I just realized what kind of shirt Kelly's wearing today, July 4th.
It's a British flag, isn't it?
Yeah, I almost wore my Union flag bikini top. But I was like, you know what? It's not that kind of stream. So I'll just go with like, you know, my Big Ben. Yeah. Yep. Woo woo.
That's exactly right, Patrick. I'm sorry. I just saw this. He's been some really bad people as DM. So have I. Like, I have been the worst people in the world because that's the job.
So do you always look forward to jumping into, let's say, a more like, kind-hearted NPC, like, jumping into that role?
No. I love the bad guys.
All right, now I need to balance it out. Okay, I see.
Hi, Cassie. Thanks for popping into the chat. Speaking of people who are just too sweet.
Reflective Rambling is in the chat.
Hi, Cass. Cassie working on some artwork.
I also noticed that there's someone in there who's impersonating me and calling himself John Webster. Please don't let him steal my orange juice, okay?
Okay, good.
So,
John.
Because the joke at the beginning, yeah.
So,
wait a minute. I thought Emma was about to say something.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was about to ask, like, how do you sort of integrate and weave like players and player backstory into your campaigns and your world? Like,
that's an excellent question with a long answer. Okay? And I really want to do it. So you know what? Let's do a mid-roll and we'll come back to that. All right. Mid-roll, like, subscribe, because I always forget to tell everybody to do that until this point after I stream for an hour and then I'm like, oh yeah, YouTube. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. If this seems like a conversation somebody you know would like to listen in on, send it to them. Like, just because they missed it live doesn't mean they won't enjoy it after the fact. Patrons. Our Patreon High Council is headed by Lord John Bronsteen, our Patreon consists of the High Council of Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, Sixto Sounds, aka JP the Axe Grinder, who I saw in the chat earlier, as well as Ridiculous Ed Tollett, this guy right here, our alpha patron, #1 guy. We love you, Sean. keep doing the badass thing you do. We love you, buddy. And they are backed up by the lords and ladies of the realm, including Reflective Rambling, who we just said hi to, Ryan Stavka, the Russian quartermaster, an old school D&D friend of mine, and her right there, Lady Leaf Underhill.
Leaf, shh. Out of the kindness of her heart, she's lost a bet, so now she's here.
It was a bet about whether a certain person would recognize a British expression. Speaking of British,
it was
British,
you. It was a bet regarding whether or not you would understand a Britishism, Kelly.
Oh no! I bet
that you didn't, and Leaf bet that you did, and you didn't. Was it splashing out?
Yeah, splash out.
Wait, I knew what splashing out was.
This was a conversation that Emma was a part of, where she said she splashed out for something, and I was just like, we're going to skip any more details because it gets a little.
But I know that. All right.
But I'll tell you the story later. Just suffice it to say, it's awesome. But a child might accidentally find this, and I'm going to leave the story there. But it was a fun conversation to be had. So yeah, thanks to our patrons. If you would like to be a patron, our link is down in the description for our Patreon. You should go check out John Webster Film. He did a live stream last night about Star Trek First Contact, which was fantastic. I missed some of it because I got a phone call. It'd be like that sometimes, but I watched most of it, and it was great. A great panel, and a great topic. I would say go subscribe to the Unspun Yarn as well. Nessie, my other co-host, hasn't been streaming lately. She's about to move halfway across the United States from where she lives now, so she didn't have a whole lot of excess time. Yeah, she's building a house, so she didn't have a whole lot of excess time, but go check out her older stuff. It's fantastic. She does a lot of mythology stuff. I've been a guest a couple of times. Kelly's been on there. Emma, have you been on there?
Yes, a while back, like one of the earlier streams about unicorns.
Unicorns, right? Oh yeah, because you've done a little bit of talking about unicorns. Anyway, go subscribe to their stuff. I have a second channel called Here Be Games where I live stream gameplay stuff. Thursday nights I've been playing City Skylines, which is a relaxing city building game. We've had a lot of fun. I name streets after people. I also yesterday started playing Stellaris. Boy, it was tough. It was a tough start. I don't know who was watching, but it was a tough start. We got cornered, cut off from the rest of the galaxy, and had to fight a couple wars right there at the beginning of the stream. So it was tough, but it's a fun game, and I'll probably continue playing that. Come back next week to this channel, and we will be talking about Season 6 of the Clone Wars. We are approaching the end of our Clone Wars content. Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Season 6 next week. The week after that, we will be wrapping up Loki discussion, which has been a fantastic show, by the way. I have loved Loki. Loved it. Best of the three Marvel shows out so far. None of the rest of you really make content on your own. Emma, you do a little bit of blog writing about color symbolism, and since I didn't know you were going to be here, I did not include a link, but I know it's redmiceatplay.wordpress.com.
Yeah, it is mostly a Song of Ice and Fire symbolism content. I haven't been doing much of it recently because my brain is okay, we're obsessed with D&D now. What is a Song of Ice and Fire? So what's that, last 10 years of my life? So I haven't been doing much essay work on that, but I do have essays in the works. I also have a random essay about Bo Burnham and Hamlet in the works. So that is just a random thing that my brain decided to obsess over. So now it's got an essay. So if anyone's watched the Bo Burnham Inside special, it's about that.
I hear that I need to watch that.
It is very good. It's a very lockdown specific thing. It also has a lot of topics around the sort of elder millennial topics of interest. So like
Okay.
social media and like the presence of social media and growing up.
Well, I'm Gen X, but I've got some millennial leanings.
Yeah. Content warnings galore. He does talk graphically about his own depression and wish to not necessarily be present on Earth. So just be aware of that going into it.
Trigger
like
warning.
It is intense. And like he sort of...
I've just seen a lot of people praising it on Twitter, especially people who, you know, whose opinion I value.
It is excellent. It is a brilliant piece of art that he has spent a lot of time on. The mise-en-scene, cinematography, all of the musical numbers are simultaneously hilarious and heartbreaking in the perfect, like, memifiable
And you're
way.
writing an essay about that and Hamlet.
Yes, so
because
a lot of
that'd
it
be
is...
what Emma do.
Yeah, like a lot of the themes of that show are around sort of the self-awareness of one's own like presentation of their mental breakdown, which is present in both Hamlet and Bo Burnham. So I'm looking to do a comparison of those.
Cool.
Whether those get posted in any way, shape, or form in this year is a very good question.
Well, I'll just move around real quick. Kelly, are you going to be on somebody else's stream within the next 24 hours? I figure if it's more than 24 hours out, you just have no idea.
That's usually how it goes. Yeah. Or just, you know, there's a date announced and it's just like, oh, okay, let me just write that down. By the way, Jaded Redhead's coming on. She has agreed to come on this date. And I'm like, I did? Okay, let me write that down.
Yeah, if you want to know when and where Kelly's going to be, you can find out the way she does by watching the live streams of her friends.
Yeah. It's like, oh, yep, I got to watch all the live streams just to make sure that I'm not going to be, you know,
right.
I don't miss some obligation otherwise. But yeah, I've appeared on lots of different channels talking about history, ships, nerd stuff.
Boats.
Yeah. So when it comes to just going on people's streams talking about nerd stuff, we've done a lot of Marvel stuff, but I've done like, ships and boats of ice and fire, and just talking about, nautical things in general. But I was recently on Dan's channel, Voice of Geekdom. And just FYI, I do run the Voice of Geekdom Facebook page. So if you are a fan of Dan's and haven't liked his Facebook page, I'm coming for you. Hi, Laura. That's
it's very nice to see
that
Emma
dark
and
leaning
Leaf.
rogue.
It's very nice to see Emma and Leaf, but not you and me.
That's a fellow rogue, Laura is.
Right.
I get it. Nautistical. It's nautistical, okay? And if you spell naughty, it has to be Knotty.
Oh yeah. Yeah, noted nautical nerd.
Yeah. Get the puns right.
Okay, Leaf, this is your first time ever streaming anywhere about anything ever.
Yes, it is. I hope my connection's okay, because a few minutes ago when my camera turned off, I didn't turn it off.
Oh.
Okay.
I had to figure out how to turn it back on. I don't know. There was an error message. It didn't make any sense. But for your Stellaris, when I recommended a name for a set of two planets, it was Clum and Raxacoricofallapatorius. As I said, you said you didn't know how to pronounce it, but it's pronounced just like it's spelled, Raxacoricofallapatorius.
Right, of course.
There you go.
There is a double planet system. I don't think we can inhabit it yet, but once we get some terraforming technology, we're gonna. I'm going to name it Clump and Raxacoricofallapatorius.
Clump and Raxacoricofallapatorius, stolen from Doctor Who.
Of course.
Obviously.
Clump.
Yeah, so you don't have anything you're appearing on, but Leaf is a mainstay of the Here Be Dragons Slack group. So, oh yeah, come join our Slack group. It's fun. HereBeCon. HereBeCon is coming up. If you want to get together and have vacation time with us, you need to get with me. I know Emma's probably not going to make it. Yeah.
No flights.
Sorry.
So.
Yeah. No flights across the ocean.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Also, like, whether the UK can ever fly anywhere is up for debate. But anyway.
But Leaf and Kelly should both be.
Yeah.
I think Leaf and Kelly are both going to be there. Yeah, and it's going to be like no kids allowed. It is just going to be us hanging out in a house, mostly a few days of activities, several days of just chilling, and enjoying adult beverages and herbal medicines. And
we had this discussion last night. We were like, let's not do something every moment of every day.
Right. But some moments of some days.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Potter keeps talking about ThereBeCon. There being in Europe.
Yeah.
I would love that. That would be awesome. But anyway, I digress. All of that. There was something else I wanted to bring up in the mid-roll, and I don't remember what it was. Must not have been that important.
So HereBeCon, like anything on like I Know That Nerd or retro review?
No. Don't remember. It wasn't super important, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, let's get back to the D&D discussion. So, what was that really awesome question you asked me 10 minutes ago?
How do you sort of weave player backstory into your world and your campaign?
Okay, so honestly, it depends on how the player presents it to me. And Leaf, if I may, I'm going to use your character as an example.
Oh, I was thinking of Jolie's character because you keep having relatives of hers that she doesn't know pop up and be major influences on the story.
I am going to use you as an example because you have a very sort of like you have a very specific backstory. Your character, as far as the rules are concerned, is a gnome. But genetically, sort of like ancestrally, you've got some halfling in there, you got some elf in there, you got some gnome in there, you got different kind of gnome in there, and that's an interesting backstory. And you also had this idea for who those people were and what they did. But when you brought all that to me, I was like, okay, well, this is what it feels like you're saying, and this is how this person, okay, they didn't do this thing, they did this thing, which is similar but not exactly it's a similar idea but not exactly the same. And so I took what Leaf brought to me and I just filed off the serial numbers and stamped my own thing on it and let her go with that. And as you say, Jolie's character is another one. There's a very prominent family of tieflings in that campaign who are up to no good and performing all types of shenanigans. Jolie is playing as a tiefling who is up to no good and all kinds of shenanigans. So I was just like, well, you're one of them. That was almost like a no-brainer for me. And I've done that with a lot of, like, the story is about the heroes. The story is about the player characters. So anytime you can say, that person who is integral to the story should relate, maybe not blood relative, but should relate in some way to one of the player characters. It gives that player, that character, added urgency to, like, that's why people were fighting in Red Team today, in Ruby Team, because Jolie wanted to tell her family members what they found out, and And Laura, the rogue, is like, I don't want anybody to know this yet. Like, I want to figure this out before we go telling people. But Jolie's character is like, no, I'm telling my family, period, because that's what I'm going to do. And it was a heated exchange between those characters. It was a great time because the players didn't get their feelings hurt, you know. But I always think that's a great idea. Like, you're going to have your idea of, like, this is going to happen, then this, then this, then this, then this. And these are the big NPCs along the way. And every time you can take one of the big NPCs and tie them to one of the other characters. I do that every time. Maybe not every time, but you know, I do that as often as I can because it makes the world and the story about the characters.
That reminds me, I've developed
Does that
my
make sense?
backstory a little and need to share that with you at some point. Or I've
Yeah.
had ideas that you
Yep.
may want to sort of pick and choose from. So.
We'll talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how to contact me.
Mm-hmm. It just reminded me that maybe I should tell you that.
Yeah,
stuff. As my DM, you should probably know.
Yeah. We'll have that conversation some other time. But like, as a player, I've always appreciated that when a dungeon master will, you know, just, again, tweak things just ever so slightly to make it personal to my character. Sorry, Mom's being, she's
being cheeky.
stirring up trouble here. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate you.
She's being cheeky. That's a Britishism. I know those.
Oh man,
Cheeky
hold
nugget.
on, Mike. Ooh,
Hi,
sorry,
Mama
I was
Bethany.
getting some
Good to see you.
serious lag there for a second,
Oh, okay.
and I'm still getting serious lag. Okay,
Oh,
nobody freak out.
okay.
I'm gonna pop off and just reconnect.
Okay.
It's gonna take seconds.
Okay.
I don't promise not to freak out.
So, Leaf, if there was, let's say, Stephen like builds this, some kind of like, I don't want to say dungeon, but some kind of contraption, like a house or a sewer or something that the party members need to go into, other than like if there was a gigantic spider you knew was in there, would you completely refuse to go in as a player? Like, because we had this issue the other night with my other group, like the person who was meant to be down there in this huge layer, just it was a giant spider, and she was just like, I don't wanna. So, Leaf, would you ever reach that point where you're just like, I don't want to go in? No. I want to go home.
Did she end up going in?
So we were in already, but we were just kind of like had to make our way across this field of questionable mushrooms. You know, if we accidentally stepped on one, it would either do nothing, fart, release poison, release hallucinogenic, or scream. So she's like, so we're just kind of like making our way across this field. But yeah, this gigantic spider, like, does Stephen have to say, like, so this is definitely not a spider as he describes a spider? So
Which I did do, by the way.
What
Stephen
other
promised to not put spiders in the game.
Okay. So it was part of
arachnophobia, but he'd still put them in and was like saying he was going to put them in specially for me because I have arachnophobia, and I was like, no, I'd rather not. So he said he wouldn't, and then he ended up running a module, an old one that he like reworked a little for 5e, and at one point there was fortunately I wasn't the one who got attacked. Poor Nessie was, and by something which he kept saying was definitely not a spider. So it was totally obvious to all of us that as written in the module, it was a spider. And then, and so he said it was a giant cave cricket. And the only problems with that, one thing, Nessie wasn't really happier with a cave cricket than a spider. And then
It doesn't make it
later
any less.
we went into a part of the dungeon where there were a lot of cave crickets. And so we were we're checking it out and not going to go in there. And he had to tell us, okay, those are actual cave crickets. They're harmless, unlike the definitely not a spider cave cricket. So we could.
That will attack you and try to eat your head.
Yeah.
I want to talk about campaign design a little bit.
Okay.
Because I almost always start with a BBEG and work backwards from there. Emma, are you finding that that's how you kind of did it?
So it was more that I came up with a premise that would be interesting and tried to find a big bad that would be doing that.
Okay. That's also a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
But
so that's the way that I've worked. Yeah.
Like my big bad evil guy that I'm running for Ruby team. Again, it was inspired. She was literally inspired by me thinking too much about some of the implications brought up in a Joe Magician video, and specifically Joe Magician and Shakespeare of Thrones talking about the archetypes of witches as like twisted versions of the maiden mother crone archetypes, and how like a maiden has certain qualities, a mother has certain qualities, a crone has certain qualities, but the witch versions of those are almost always sort of upside down. Like the maiden is pure and virginal, a maiden witch is a seductress. Whereas a crone is known for her wisdom, but a crone witch is going to like give you prophecies that become those self-fulfilling prophecies. Like everything would have been fine until you heard about the thing and then you tried to stop the thing and that caused the thing to happen.
Yep.
So I made a mother witch who was just like, what are motherly qualities? What's the photo negative of that? And that's who she is. And she's a very unpleasant person, let's just say. But, and I sort of went backwards from there. Because I'm like, okay, now I've got a big bad evil guy. She's doing really big bad evil things. Why is she doing big bad evil things? And then so now I understand the motivations. So why is she doing this? What is she trying to accomplish? What from her past motivates her to be this awful person? Because I don't just like the mustache twirling. Ha ha! You've fallen for my evil plan. That's not fun for me. There should be a reason. Thanos is a great bad guy because he's trying to achieve something that he sees as a complete positive. I'm the only one who really understands. I'm the only one with the willpower and the wherewithal to see through all the terrible crap I'm going to have to go through to achieve this end for the betterment of everyone. That's why I love Thanos as a bad guy, because you could understand him.
Yeah.
I just don't like the guy that throws the woman on the train tracks and doesn't even bother to ransom her, Like,
yeah. I think so. My friend at work, who I sit next to in my job when we're allowed in the office, she got her inspiration for her big bad from the magic system that she used in the world and the way that magic system was breaking down. And so I don't want to say too much just on the off chance that her players appear and watch this, but there were pacts that are now broken, and in breaking those pacts, magic is now suffusing the world a bit more, but in a way that can be hoarded, and so that's the way that she got her inspiration for how any big bad or any person that was good but could like, I don't know, do the Game of Thrones Dany arc, where it's like, I'm in this for a good end. Oh no,
Right.
everything
Emma,
is
what are you
burning.
talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
really don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just really interesting to see where all these sparks of inspiration come from, and like how there are so many different ways to approach, you know, creating any campaign or creating a big bad, or and it all seems to start with like, this is a thing I found interesting, and then just asking yourself questions about it over and over and over again. It's like,
Yeah.
well, if that, then this.
Right.
Okay, now we've got that. If that, then this. Then what? And then what? And then what? And you're just constantly, it's like an iterative process of just.
And the thing is, you can look at like layers of sediment too, you know, like you lay down that base layer and that's good enough for now. And then 2 days later, you ask yourself a question and you've had time to, you know, to let that layer settle. And then you can add the next layer on top of that and on top and on top and on top. Which is how I eventually got to knowing like the players in Ruby team are in a city of my world called Lyrith, which I have described as fantasy Atlantic City. You know, or you can go to Thorfinn, which is very similar to a high fantasy, high magic Paris. You know, which they definitely have different feels. You know, one is much more about culture, the other one is much more about entertainment. And it's like, okay, you go to Crescent. You know what? Why would one go there? Well, do you need big white blocks of stone? Because that's where they quarry it. How are the people there fed? Well, there's a river that runs nearby, and the old quarry is now a lake that they use for fishing and for water. The villages to the east, in the rockier part, are given over to fruit trees and whatnot. There are some villages that produce crops in the south and the west. To the north, it's a little wilder. But like, this isn't stuff I knew early on. You know, it's also like a major stop on an overland trade route. But like, this is not things that when I started building it, I didn't know that. But every time I came back there, I added just one detail. And before long, it had 100 details, and I knew all about it. And I understand its trade relationships with the nearby cities, and how it gets the things that it needs for its citizen, and what it supplies to the citizens of other places that makes it relevant place to go. But it didn't happen overnight. You know, that's years of playing in that game world stacked on top of each other. But Crescent just started out as a place for one of my characters to be from.
Wow.
From
tiny seeds grow great oak trees.
And I was probably 20, it was over 20 years ago when I started building on this, and it just started as a place for my character to be from. But now it's like adventures start there. I know what the politics are like there. I know what the streets look like. You want the best weapons and armor in the region? You got to go talk to Anton Allier. He's at the end of Steel Street. But again, years and years of playing, of adding detail on top of it. So world building is a thing that continues to go on, and even once you've done it, when you come back to do your next campaign, you're going to do it again, even in the same game world, because you're going to have to add things, or maybe, you know, tweak something. The river looks like it's here, but I'm going to move it over here just a little bit because I need it to be nearer this thing. So I'm going to just, you know, move this over here. Now the river's next to the thing, and because I need it to be. And then I'm going to build up that part of the map, the geopolitics of that area, and the ethnic and cultural identity of the people there. And anyway, so world building is a thing that just keeps happening even after you've done it.
Yeah, I find it really interesting as well how many people like go to like general storytelling techniques for like building a world. Like there's nothing like no secret sauce for D&D necessarily, like where it's like, okay, well, you know, do some creative writing in your spare time for funsies. That is completely different from D&D. It's like such a like broad skill set which sort of exercises those creative juices so that you can just sort of have this space to just sort of explore and have fun with.
Because as the one doing the world building, you have to design in things that you don't design. You have to put in things that you don't have control over, because the players need to have that agency. They need to find that spot where they can make the difference. Just as a for instance, in the game that I'm playing with an enemy spy, we are currently playing in the setting of Tamriel. Okay, that is the Elder Scrolls universe, Skyrim. That's where we're playing. We are playing from a time well before Skyrim, actually just a few years. Skyrim is Elder Scrolls 5. We're actually playing from just a few years before Elder Scrolls 3. And one of the things I said to him is, like, by the fact that we are playing in this same time period, you should take that game and you should assume that everything in that part of the game world is as it is at the beginning of that game, and consider that game to never have happened. Like, because it's like a chosen one prophecy. The story is about us, not about Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind and its video game prophesied character. So, like, this is ours now. So all that stuff from the video game, you should just throw it out. Because otherwise it's a spoiler even. Like, I know what's going to happen. Actually, I don't know what's going to happen. And I want to not know what's going to happen. Because I played Morrowind. I beat Morrowind. I loved that game. It was fantastic. Part of the reason I'm so much enjoying the game we're playing in is because I know the game world. I know the lore really well. So my character gets to be... I've had theological debates with other characters in that game, and it's been fantastic fun. But, like, I told my DM, like, you should throw all that stuff out. Anything that's canon to the established timeline of the game should not apply. That lets us affect the game world. It lets us be the driving force behind the story. So if you wanted to play a Star Wars game and you wanted to set it, 1 year after the Battle of Yavin, well, The Empire Strikes Back hasn't happened yet, and as far as I'm concerned, won't happen. Because that story is not about that anymore. It's about this group of player characters. Now, maybe it does happen because you're off doing this thing while they're doing that thing, but, like, it doesn't have to. You know what I mean? And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that if you are going to play in an established, in somebody else's game world, the moment you start playing in it, it's not theirs anymore. It's yours. It belongs to the players at that point. And that's just part of my campaign design that I always like to keep in mind. Like, I'm very precious about having this idea of, like, this is what my big bad evil guy is doing, and this is what I think the players are going to do, and they're going to go here next, and then they're going to get that thing, and then they'll go fight the big bad at the end, and yay! But that might not be what the players are inspired to do, or they might not, they might not want to take the train to get there. They might want to hire a stagecoach, and take the scenic route, and that's all fine and good. But knowing where you're going is still very important, though. Otherwise, you're just wandering in the desert, and nobody wants to do that.
On a horse with no name.
Yeah, Potter says worlds should be born and then they grow and change. Exactly.
His follow-up comment of wagons.
Yeah.
Yeah, wagons.
Oh dear.
I know your character's named Daihi Nimbletoes, but I really think you ought to be just like Daihi Wagon Man. Anyway, I digress. So campaign design is different from world building because world building really is like making the setting, whereas campaign design is more like laying down, is putting people and events into the story. And this is also where you start to lay in your theme most heavily. Like, and theme is a thing that I do sometimes as a dungeon master. Sometimes I don't get as heavy on the themes. I'm not doing anything heavily themed right now, but I've definitely done ones that were more like about colonialism, or one about like slavery, free will, freedom for these people, but not for those. And like, it's fun. It can be a fun way to explore different political ideas. I have a society in my game world. None of you have been there yet. Probably won't go there in any of the games you're playing. But I have a society where there is a class of like upper class slaves. They do not have freedoms the way you and I would recognize freedoms. Like, they don't have reproductive freedoms. They do not have freedom of choosing where to live or what profession they will have. They all serve a local, like their local chieftain. But one of the ways the chieftains display their power to other chieftains is by having the best people, the prettiest, the cleanest, the most well educated, So these people have fine lives, but do they? And what happens when you perform a duty for one of these chieftains and they reward you by giving you a slave? How does a character or a player respond to that? That can be a lot of fun too. And it's not as story driven. It's more like putting the characters in a messed up situation and just letting the chaos happen. I've done that in one of my games. Like, people were granted slaves as reward for their job well done. And the players had to wrestle with, what do we do with these people? I'm happy to report that they, basically freed them, educated them, gave them good lives, let them, determine their own futures. But it was even hard for some of them to do that because they come from a culture where they haven't questioned it. So we had to re-educate the people. I thought it was a blast. It was a really interesting exercise in, just seeing how the players responded to that. Not every dungeon master wants to do that. A lot of times they just want to have the big bad evil guy doing crazy stuff. But I do occasionally like to put the players in an uncomfortable situation. I gave Ruby team an extremely overpowered magic item today that that other people who are much more powerful than them would absolutely kill them in order to obtain. So good luck, guys. It's fun.
Oh no!
Have fun. This is an excellent question. How do you address issues like sexism, racism, slavery, homophobia, etc. in the 21st century? You started to touch on that as I was typing this. Okay, so the thing is, like, nobody is perfect. Everybody has their blind spots. Yeah, but I like to think I am as egalitarian, I'm as woke as I can be on these things. I try to treat everybody with respect. I'm not sexist. I'm not racist. I'm not homophobic. I am not pro-slavery. But I'm a dungeon master, so I am actually all of those things also, depending on the moment. And that's the thing, though. Like, there is no epic adventure story about heroes without villains for them to take down. Now, the thing is understanding your audience as well. And I've made this mistake before by presenting things in my game that have upset people. We're all human, and that can possibly happen. But like, if you are playing with a bunch of people who are LGBTQ, maybe having homophobia be one of the central themes of your game, not a good plan. Or maybe maybe for those players, if they want it, it is the perfect idea. But this comes down to when you're designing your campaign, you need to know what the themes are. And you need to tell the players what the themes are before you start playing. Like, I generally tell people my game world can be quite brutal. The power is decentralized. There's a lot of people who are answerable to other people. Bad things happen. Be ready for that. This is not, I don't run a silly campaign world. I run kind of a dark campaign world. Anybody that plays in them will know that. I mean, yes, you can get a plushie at the aquarium, but there's like, if you're caught being abandoned and you're abandoned because your family's starving, that don't matter. You're still going to get hung in town square.
Yeah. The way that I've gone about it while building Naomi stability is that I just chose for things that I don't want to address to just not be an issue in this world.
Right.
Because you can do that. So
You
issues like
can.
racism, sexism, slavery, and homophobia, not a big deal in this world. Issues
They
of
don't
classism,
hardly exist.
elitism, and capitalism, very much a problem in this world. So I think like you can just like, it's your world. Like you do what you want. If you don't want to address a thing, don't address a thing. Just make it not an issue. Like because my world is so high magic, gender reassignment, super easy, bish bash boff, find a cleric to do an adapted Greater Restoration, Bob's your uncle. Capitalism wise though, you might need to pay a pretty penny, and how do you address that? So like similarly, like physical disabilities, you can just like charm a wheelchair, for instance, and you just make one. And it's super easy. And it's high magic, and a lot of people have magical abilities. So they're just like wandering wizards that just go around, and it's just like, I need some money. Do you need me to do a thing for you? And they'll just like generate a magical solution for that. So
I will say this: the thing of these things that he's listed that is most likely to come up in any of my games is probably the racism thing, and that's going to be more like, you're an orc, I don't like you. You're a tiefling, I don't like you. Not you're brown and I don't like you. So it's race more like it's a speciesist as opposed to racist type thing. Humans treat other humans generally pretty well unless they're asshole to everybody. It's not a skin color thing usually. It's a species thing usually. At least as it pops up in my games. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, they don't have to exist. If you play in my game, you will notice very few people will mention your gender to you. I mean, if somebody who was sexually, physically attracted to your specific gender and look, they might bring it up, but that can be a man or a woman, and it directed towards a man or a woman, because that's how I want my game world to be. Like, I don't want it to be limited. I want every player to feel free to play the character they want. So there is no in-game reason not to play a lesbian half-orc, because you're not going to experience sexism, racism, and homophobia in general. Now, there's going to be the odd asshole here and there, but that's just that's the truth of the world. That's not the society,
One of the NPCs I dealt with seemed pretty heightist.
Yeah. Occasionally, you will get that too.
Little one in this very condescending tone, just because I'm only 3 feet tall.
Right. But the point is, that was one character that was not the society viewing you that way. It's not systemic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we got about 15 minutes left, so people in the chat, if you've got any last things you want to bring up, bring them up now. Leaf, Kelly, questions? Emma, questions, comments?
I have a question. Have
Sure.
you ever created, let's say, a stage of a fight or a conflict, and had had your characters like the characters completely ignore it? Like, did you design a stage, like a fight stage, and then they just like completely mess it up?
Define mess it up.
Okay, so recently, instead of there was an Ithalid ship like that was, gonna like carry off a bunch of townsfolk as slaves, and they were already kind of hooked up to the ship, so we just decided to blow the ship up. So that's what we did. Our DM had designed five decks of the ship for us to fight through, and you
guys just blew it up.
Yeah. Has that happened to you?
Yeah, it has. Maybe, not exactly like that, but, I have spent hours crafting this really interesting terrain to have a combat on, like it was pedestals of rock, and it was melted wax beneath. And it was almost like a platformer video game. We had to jump from one to the next and fight stuff along the way,
Okay.
And characters are just like, no, here's what we do. I lay out the portable hole. Everybody jumps in the portable hole. And then I misty step. I open the portable hole. Don't set off any of the traps. Don't agitate any, like, okay, great.
Yep. All right.
And that's just the one that comes off the top of my head. The thing is, a dungeon master, no matter how smart he is not going to outsmart 4 or 5 players most of the time. They're 4 or 5 brains versus 1. So you just got to do your best to keep it challenging along the way. Like the fight I had in our game earlier today, I knew what this wizard was going to do, right? And I was like, I really hope I don't TPK you guys. And they actually got through it pretty quick and easy because they just outsmarted me, even though they were fighting a wizard in his own home. And there are a bunch of 6th level characters against a 10th level wizard carrying a staff with a magi. But, it is what it is.
All right.
Stuff happens.
All right, Sean's
Dungeons
home.
go
Yay!
unexplored.
Yeah. Oh, welcome home, Sean. I'm glad you made it, buddy. And you're right. No plan survives engagement with the enemy. But I was literally going to close them in a room with a cloud kill spell and a wall of force to hold them in. And it was going to kill them. And I'm like, now you guys are 6th level. There is at least a way out at the back of the room where you can climb down a ladder. But it's not going to be pretty that whole time. But, this one, I cast suggestion.
I suggest you don't do that.
Yeah, help us fight those living statues.
Yeah, I said I
Way to go,
suggest
Lee.
you cooperate with us and cast suggestion, and the rolls went in my favor, and I got the big evil wizard on our side instead of fighting against us. Mess up your battle. Sorry.
It's not a pen. It's not a pen. It's a paintbrush.
All right.
It looks like you're being painted into existence sometimes when you shift.
I thought it looked like brain surgery was going on.
I just put it up. I just put it up and I saw where it was landing. I'm like, that's good.
This is fine.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was really great. Like I had a way to put the party in extreme danger right from the get-go. but they outsmarted me.
That's
And
good to know,
and
though.
that's fine. Like I
as a
expected it to be a
DM,
lot more.
like,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, as a DM, that's a good thing, right? When it comes to, something that, keeps you guessing, it's like, like I want to say like they're kind of like students you can be proud of.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I wasn't mad
Also-
about it. Go ahead, Lee.
Also, Potter, who pointed that out, then did something similar where he got away from you because you forgot he had those magic boots.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had
Yeah.
Quicksilver boots, and he's like, "I just run," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" I just run, and I'm a rogue, so I can take, dash action. Dash is a bonus action. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot keep up with you, can I?" So
But still, like, the next steps you took, again, it was like,
it forced me to think on my feet.
Yeah.
It also forced me to like, what would I was just going to arrest him, but no, that's not what happened. So I had to be like, what would this character do? And that's part of the fun of dungeon mastering too, because I will tell you this though, like my campaign design was Daihi gets arrested, and guess what? Daihi got arrested. So in the end, it still was like on the tracks, so to speak. It was on the path that I had intended, but like I didn't force it either. Like Daihi could have gotten away. The rest of like I was perfectly willing to let it go and be something else, but that's not the way it played out as the players were playing it. But ultimately, he did end up in custody, and the story did continue to follow that way. But I also tried to reward him by when we got where we were going, it was very involved with his backstory.
Mm-hmm.
I did also enjoy how all the other characters like were very, gung ho about trying to save him and trying to make sure that he stays free. And I'm not, Potter, it was difficult to read you. I wasn't sure if you were serious about now he runs away and I'm just going to make another character. I was like, is he just like being
I'm sorry, Jay Isboard is saying is making a joke, but that's what I do. I mastered the dungeon and I know things.
But yeah, I was as far as everyone's like emotional, connection, to this character and how everybody was reacting, it was like, oh man, they're really going to try to save you, buddy.
Right, and that was also really fun. The fact that those characters had already bonded enough to really care about this other character. But again, from the campaign design, I didn't design Daihi gets arrested, but like when I got to that point, when I knew that he was on the run from the law, I knew he would try. I was going to try to arrest him at some point. And when I saw my opportunity, that's when I worked it in.
Look, he's blaming shopping again.
Yeah.
What he's talking about, so Nessie's character was the one most advocating for him and most trying to protect him and most bonded to him. And yet, but she was also the one who, when he like sent us a secret message to meet him at a certain place, was like, okay, we should stay here until the custom made stuff that's going to take 2 days gets finished being made, and then go meet him.
Yeah, that was for anyone who, anyone watching that doesn't know, I was just kind of like a replacement person so I wasn't doing any kind of role playing. So I was just kind of like there. I was just like, I'm just Gwen. Like, I don't, would Gwen advocate for this? I don't know. I'm just here to shoot a bow and arrow. Like,
Right. But, and I will say this too, like looking for those opportunities where I could make it about Potter and his character. Actually, for quite a few adventures in a row, it's sort of centered on his story. And I'm sure that was very satisfying for him, and it's also satisfying for the other characters just to see it. But also like taking the opportunity to focus the story on one character, even for 2 or 3 or 4 adventures, if it makes sense, is a good idea if you can work it into your campaign, even if it's just one adventure, even if it's just one encounter. But like giving each character their moment to be the center of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean everybody gets equal time every time. It means that everybody gets a chance to be the one in the spotlight as the campaign goes on. Now, character death happens, and sometimes that means you don't get to it, you know? But like, this is why I want to know. Like, Leaf and I had a long conversation about her ancestors, you know, her parents and her grandparents and how they fit in, because I want to work that into the story. Emma's talking about she's got some backstory stuff. And I will say this too. I think my last thought I want to bring up will actually be about character creation as it pertains to campaign design. And that is, don't put too much detail into your backstory. Meaning, like, don't decide what this, you know, my parent was a guard for Duke Wellington. I'm like, I don't have a Duke Wellington. You know what I mean? But saying something like my parent was a guard for an influential nobleman, that just lets the dungeon master go, this influential rich nobleman, which lets me bring you into the story in this way, or attach you to the story in this way. Does that make sense? I'm being pretty vague.
Oh no, yeah. It's
Yeah.
you're able to just kind of plug it in.
Yeah,
like you were talking about before, you know, when you have like when Emma asked you about interweaving character backstories into the world you have built, that's great.
So I just guess I would just say, don't bring too many details.
yeah.
You know,
Right.
like the last character I played, but you know, I have a current character, my previous character. I was like, I come from another city. I didn't even decide what city. I was like, I'll let the dungeon master decide. You know, I come from a port city where there would be a big thieves guild. You tell me where that is, dungeon master. And in that place, I worked for an organized crime syndicate. You can tell me what that is. I have a sister and I have a boyfriend. My sister is my twin sister. My boyfriend is in prison. I am adventuring because there's heat on me in the city from the law. So I got out of town and I'm trying to raise money for my boyfriend's bail. But like, that was as detailed as I got. I will let the dungeon master decide who that boyfriend is. How did he get caught? What was his, you know, if I do get the money and go get him out, is he happy to see me? Has he moved on? Is he dead? Did he plan to get caught on purpose? Was he sold out? Like, I leave all that up to the dungeon master. Okay. I just wanted to give him the one hook of, there is a boyfriend. And I really find that type of character backstory design to be incredibly helpful from a dungeon master's point of view.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before on like one of our Zoom calls, but how like my character Garth is a barbarian and she has no idea whether her parents are still alive. Like, she just got taken one day and she has no idea if they're still there. where they are, whether they're alive, whether they like hate her, or anything like that. So like that is completely up to Stephen's discretion if and when it crops up in the campaign. Like
it is, but like as the cooperative storytelling element comes in that you tell me I want something with my parents. And maybe you do say, I want to find my parents and I want to confront them. Okay, well, as a dungeon master, I can work on that. You might also just say, my parents are out there and I don't know anything about them. Hey, I can work with that too. That puts a little bit more on me, but don't get mad when they're jerks and you want to thank them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was supposed to be a happy reunion. No.
But so this isn't really world building or campaign design, but it is related enough because, as you say, my campaign is like I go big bad evil guy, figure out their motivations, figure out their, what are they trying to achieve? What are the reasons that they are willing to do things beyond what most people would do? What drove them to this? And then I just backtrack 2 or 3 steps from there. And I'm like, so I kind of have the end game figured out. I kind of have the early on, how am I going to push characters down the track here? But those roads in between can be navigated by the characters all along the way. They can criss and cross and they can do things out of order. But I always feel like there's these mile markers that I plant. And like when you make it to the mile marker, that's the campaign design that I really am. And maybe it's like getting a certain item, defeating a certain monster, getting to a certain location and getting a piece of information. It can be a lot of different things, can be those mile markers. But that's generally how I do it, is just I kind of have like maybe the first adventure completely figured out. And then where do I want you to be 5 adventures from now, 10 adventures from now, 20 adventures from now at the end of the campaign. And then just let the players drive that narrative from mile marker to mile marker.
Okay.
Okay, that's my final thought. Anybody else got anything? I'm going to have to pee soon, but like by all means, we can, 2 hours drinking coffee. So, and it's empty. So, but if anybody's got anything else to say, please, by all means, bring it up. Anybody in the chat wanted to make sure we touched on something or a question for me or any of my guests, feel free to ask now. And if not, we'll just kind of say goodbye. So Leaf, Kelly, or Emma, any final thoughts or comments or questions?
None that come to mind at it's 1 a.m. I'm tired brain.
Right.
Yeah, I was able to ask my questions, so yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I didn't have time to think up questions in advance, so
I'm still glad you were here, Lee. It was still wonderful. Like, I still got you on my channel before anybody else. I consider that an absolute win.
okay.
All right. Well,
we roll like that, like last minute. Hey, get on a stream. While the stream's happening, right on, Emma. Yeah.
Just invite myself on. Like, hi guys.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't even think of doing this topic until yesterday. I really just kind of almost got caught with my pants down. You know what I mean?
It's an excellent topic.
But this turned out to be
having
really,
your pants down
fun.
is an excellent topic.
Yeah. Well, I sort of think so. But no. But I really enjoyed this conversation. This is hardly like the end all be all advice, but I think we got some good points and got some good ideas and shared some fun stories. So yeah, I consider this an absolute win.
Yes, agreed. Yep.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Yeah. I guess she's like mostly talking to people in the chat, but still, like, not Potter, never Potter.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't see anything coming up in the chat, and we're all done. So, yeah, I think we'll just move to signing off. So, once again, Emma, Kelly, Leaf, thank you so much for joining me. It was we had a good time. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you hit that like. Make sure you subscribe if you're not. And if you're watching this later, thanks for watching eventually. You could have been here live. It would have been way cooler if you were, but like, we'll take what we get. We'll take what we get. Come back next week for seasons discussion. I've been talking for 2 hours. Can you tell? Come back next week for season 6 discussion. Season 6 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And then the week after that, we will be wrapping up Loki. And then the week after that, I don't know, but I don't need to know yet. These guys, they show up occasionally. Not Leaf. Leaf, this is your first time, but thanks for coming. Kelly is a regular like guest contributor here on Here Be Dragons, as well as like the HBD sister channels of John Webster Film and the Unspun Yarn. Emma
I try to
has
be
been
active in the Slack too. I try to be.
Yeah, Kelly is very active in our Slack group. Emma also active in our Slack group. Used to make content on your own a little bit more. I know life is keeping you busy, as well as like your new Dungeons and Dragons obsession. It's keeping you busy.
It's mainly I'm not busy. It's mainly the Dungeons and Dragons obsession at this point. It's like literally, it's a problem.
I understand, as somebody who has been obsessed with the game since I was 9 years old. I get it. But
look what you've done to me, Stephen. You've made me into a monster.
This was his goal the whole time.
Yeah, like literally, I even told you earlier, I did this because I just know if I have a game with 5 people in it, one of them is a future dungeon master. And I get to play in their games.
Yeah, you're welcome to Naomi's stability.
Well, see, and like they're usually very excited to have their own first dungeon master play in their game. They're like, "Oh, I want to play a game with you," and where I'm the DM and you're a player. Like, that's a real thing. So, excellent, it has worked. All right, so thanks everyone one last time. Appreciate it. I had a blast. We'll see you all next week for some Star Wars: The Clone Wars action. And until then, you know what it is. Peace and be excellent to each other.